Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we recap day 3 of Senior Bowl practice down in Mobile, Alabama, and we get into the benefits for both players and teams when it comes to the Senior Bowl. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's podcast is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. I'm Louis DiBiase. It's a Thursday edition of the show, episode 4 of 5 this week. Download it into your phone wherever you get the podcast. We're available on all platforms, on YouTube as well in video form. And we're on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE. And my co-host, Gino Camilleri, is on Twitter at GC24_football. Still down in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl. Got a couple more days here before I go back up to Western New York. Got the game on Saturday. A lot of the media heading home the last few days, but I really do see a lot of value in the game, and I'm intrigued to see these players in-game situations with, different players, especially obviously small school guys like Christian Watson and Malik Willis going up against some competition that they didn't really see at the college level. I think that is really a nice benefit to the Senior Bowl. And there's a lot of benefits to this week for both prospects and for teams. And as I said in the beginning of the show, that's what we're going to get into today, is discussing why this is so important and why the entire NFL comes down here and why there was, 900 plus credentialed media members. I mean, this thing has really become a huge event, as has the NFL scouting combine, pro days. I mean, it's really incredible to see just how popular the NFL draft has gotten. It's always been like this from an evaluation standpoint for teams and scouts, but, to see all the media down here and just the fan affair with the draft and the buzz around it. Normally when I remember growing up, when the football season was over, it's like, okay, hockey time, it's time for the Flyers, it's time for the 76ers, it's time for the Phillies. And while it's still the case and Philadelphia loves all their sports teams, football is 365 days a year. It's February. The Eagles just ended their season a few weeks ago in the playoffs, and we're already diving into free agency and the draft. It doesn't stop because, as I said, the Senior Bowl is already underway and the 2021 season isn't even over. We've got the Super Bowl next week. We've got the Pro Bowl this weekend. You got Darius Slay down in Las Vegas for the Pro Bowl. You got Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave, Jake Elliott. A lot of reserve alternates for the Birds are now at the Pro Bowl. But that's the way it is. Football is a 365-day thing now, and I think it's going to be like that for as long as it's around. And the Senior Bowl is really the start of that. It's where the draft starts, and I think there's a lot of benefits to this event that I was thinking about that I want to talk about on the podcast today. I think it's an extremely important part of the process for both players and teams. And when it comes to teams and why they put so much stock into this week is because I think it's for the first time they can really meet with these players. They can coach them. They can see in detail what they can do live, right? Just get a more up close and personal look at them. And although tape is the main source of where your opinions should come from in the evaluation process, it is different when you can see, little intricate details about a wide receiver's route running or a cornerback stance or a quarterback's throwing motion. I think it's really important for teams to get that hands-on experience, especially if you're a team like the New York Jets or the Detroit Lions who are coaching this week, and really they can, especially for what they do, they can see how players fit into their scheme, their philosophies, their style of coaching. And I think that really does benefit them. It's why the San Francisco 49ers fell in love with Deebo Samuel, who came down to Mobile, and they thought, here's a Swiss Army knife weapon that's going to be perfect for our offense. And look at him now. They decided to move him to running back this year. And he was, to me, outside of quarterbacks, maybe the most valuable player to his team, to his offense. It was maybe him or Cooper Kupp. So the Senior Bowl for teams is extremely beneficial. And again, proceed with caution. It should never be the end-all, be-all. You never want to put too much stock in the Senior Bowl, in the combine, in pro days, in interviews and rumors you hear, those things shouldn't dictate and really drive how a team should feel about a player, how you should feel about a player. It should never be the end all be all. But somebody yesterday at the stadium actually made a good point to me. Somebody told me the other day, the point was that it has to be a good piece to the main part of the process, which is film. It should help you confirm things you knew or learn more that makes you go back to the tape and study. So it should be something that you work off of the main basis, which is tape. And you use this as a nice, spice to the dish at the top, right? And it makes you think and confirm maybe what you already saw on tape, or makes you go back to the tape and be like, I didn't really notice that, because it shouldn't be the thing that defines anything. I think that's what really drove me nuts. The pro days were kind of like that too, when Teddy Bridgewater had that horrible pro day back in 2014, and he took the gloves off and everybody was talking about it. And it kind of did tank his status. I thought right there at that time, he was in the QB1 conversation with Blake Bortles and Johnny Manziel. And instead, he fell all the way down to the 32nd overall pick to Minnesota. And I think Teddy Bridgewater wasn't a star, but he's been a very reliable starter for a long time now. And I think people put too much stock into the pro day. The same thing, I don't know why 2014 is what comes to my head, but Johnny Manziel had a circus of a pro day, right? He's wearing a helmet and shoulder pads, music's blasting. It was just a hype fest, and people bought into it. And then Johnny Manziel flamed out in a year. So don't let the pro days, don't make the Senior Bowl, the combine, really dramatically change your opinion of a player, because you should be defining that from tape, from interviews. But it should be a really nice piece to the puzzle. It again should have you confirm things or ask more questions that you get answers on tape. Like, is a quarterback's hesitation and timing off more because of the fact that he's never coached? He's never been coached by these guys at the Senior Bowl, and he never threw to these wide receivers before? Or is it something detailed that you did notice? You noticed something about the throwing motion or a lack of confidence or something with the footwork, and you're like, let me go back to the tape and see, was that something that I didn't notice? Was that a tendency on his tape? Or was it something that was just a microcosm of the environment that he's currently in? And I think that's where it really does become extremely beneficial for teams. And I think you've seen the Eagles really invest in players at the Senior Bowl. I think they really do value this process, and I think they do come away a lot of the time really falling in love with some of these players. We'll get into the benefits of it for the players coming up next. Guys, this is Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, and it's sponsored by GetUpside. It's an incredible app that everybody who buys gas needs to know about. Our listeners right now are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free GetUpside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using GetUpside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a year in cash back. And there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Once again, download the free GetUpside app and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more. Again, that's promo code TOUCHDOWN at GetUpside. All right, Eagles fans, we're back on this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's Super Week, brought to you by GetUpside, and there's no better place to get coverage of the big game than the Locked On NFL podcast. Locked On Bengals and Locked On Rams are in LA all week covering the big game. It's so exciting. I cannot wait for Bengals Rams. As for the Eagles, their season ended in the wild card round of the playoffs. So we have moved on to draft season. I'm down in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl. We've got practice updates coming for you in segment 3. But before we get into that, I'm continuing to talk about the benefits of this process, starting with the Senior Bowl for teams, but players as well. And I really do think it benefits the players in a multitude of ways. And as I mentioned before, the Eagles have seen the value in it. They've invested a lot of picks in Senior Bowl prospects. Since Howie Roseman regained power back in 2016, they've made 45 selections with draft picks. 16 of them were from Mobile. 16 of them did participate in the Senior Bowl. And it really does help teams, as I said, better evaluate and use context and really dive deeper into these players and the pros and cons of what they saw on tape. And maybe it confirms some things for you. Maybe it brings some questions back to the tape that helps you further formulate your overall opinion. And I think it really is valuable. And you've been seeing that the last few weeks, but it helps the players as well because it helps them raise their stock for sure. It could help, again, it could have the opposite effect to a certain degree. But as I said, if a team has a good process, it won't really tank your stock, but it can certainly help raise it. And I think you look at small school players, especially the likes of Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty. I don't know why I'm saying it as if that's the first time you've ever heard his name, but Willis and Christian Watson from North Dakota State. They can shake narratives too. This is why it's valuable as well, because these small school FCS players, they can shake narratives that they can't play against top competition when they're going up against a cornerback in, Christian Watson had an amazing rep one-on-one yesterday against Kobe Bryant, the cornerback from Cincinnati, where he burned him on a sluggo down the left sideline and then went up and mossed him as well. There's an opinion sometimes that formulates about a small school player that he can't play up to certain competition only because he was a small school player. But to me, when those players can do that, they dominated FCS level competition or smaller, FBS, and then they go to the Senior Bowl and they do it against an Ohio State product or Alabama or, even just anybody in the Power Five, it really can help shake that narrative. And it hasn't just been for a guy like Willis or Watson, but offensive linemen as well. You look at Carson Wentz back in 2016. That was a big reason that he went to the Senior Bowl because he played at North Dakota State. And, now guys like Wentz have, and, Trey Lance have helped shake things up for Malik Willis and kind of move that narrative, back farther. But at the same time, it's certainly still there. I think that's why Josh Allen came down as well when he was at Wyoming. So I think it really does benefit small school players. And I think it also helps players show that they can do certain things, because sometimes maybe it has to do with, the team you are on based on the scheme. There could be some questions about weaknesses you have or things you can't do. And Mobile is another chance to go show that you can do certain things, right? And I think it's especially important for quarterbacks. I think, again, you look at how much stock it raised for Carson Wentz in 2016, for Dak Prescott in 2016, for Josh Allen, for Justin Herbert, heck, even Jalen Hurts. I mean, you look at some of those players and, yeah, Carson Wentz was seen as a first-round pick, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. But Carson Wentz, I remember seeing mock drafts before the Senior Bowl, it was like a 16th overall player. Whereas after having a great Senior Bowl, and it sounded like the Dallas Cowboys were in love with him, everybody said he's going to go top 3, and that's exactly what happened. The same thing with, to a lesser degree, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was seen as a 3rd or 4th round prospect. The Eagles were comfortable taking him in the 2nd round. Why? Mobile, he really impressed them down here, and that certainly came a long way in them maybe raising him up their boards. Maybe he was always high on their board, but I think teams, a lot of them had 3rd or 4th round grades on him. But then when you get your hands on him more, you really see things in depth and in detail, it helps a quarterback's stock tremendously. Justin Herbert, too, had such a great week of practice and playing 2 years ago, and it allowed the Chargers to feel comfortable taking him top 10. And look, now he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. Again, it's just like sometimes a lot of time, groupthink really formulates around the NFL. And some people just don't do their due diligence, and it's not as zoomed in. And, that groupthink ends up formulating, sometimes perception is reality, and a player's stock gets hurt because of that. But when teams can actually see that player, get their hands on them, and, see it for their own eyes, they should be doing that anyway. But I think the Senior Bowl really does help in that way as well, dispel some things. So I think it is extremely important. And you see the benefit. I mean, Malik Willis is the player we keep talking about because he has all the buzz down here. Look, every time everybody is watching practice the last few days, everybody's eyes gravitate towards Malik. Even if you don't need a quarterback, he is clearly the most polarizing player that brings the most buzz down here this week. And I think people know that if there's going to be a star that comes out of here that could be playing in the Super Bowl like Joe Burrow is right now, I think people would put their money on Malik being that player. And so He's a kid that played at Liberty that couldn't start at Auburn. So you could see where that opinion could start forming that he can't play up to certain competition. The game against Ole Miss was up and down. Of course, that had to do with him not having any NFL talent. And by the way, they still almost made that a 6-point game in the second half, but I digress. So for a guy like Malik, you're seeing what this process can do for him in a positive light. Now, there's already talk. I saw Ben Albright tweet out today that he thinks if this, there was Thor Nystrom said that a source told him the Steelers would prefer Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett as the top quarterback. Ben Albright, an NFL insider, quote tweeted it and said they'd have to trade up massively. So the buzz is already, hey, this guy's probably going to go top 10 at least. People are saying maybe mid first round, late first round, second round. Maybe the Eagles would consider him at 51. They stand no chance. It's getting to the point almost up where you'd have to trade up. Like it's getting close to that kind of hype. And that's been happening a lot in part because of the Senior Bowl. Guys, today's sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline as you cover the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updated. Oh, my dude. Holy shit. Guys, today's Locked On Eagles is brought to you by BetOnline. And BetOnline as you cover the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. Guys, today's show is also sponsored by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to store all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when choosing Rock Auto. Why would you choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Rock Auto, their prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. And when you head over to rockauto.com and see the parts available for your car or truck, make sure you write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, Eagles fans, Louis DiBiase here, wrapping up this Thursday edition of Locked On Eagles, and we're going to do it by recapping day 3 of Senior Bowl practice down in Mobile, Alabama. Practice was indoors today due to expected thunderstorms. The weather did hold up, though, pretty nice. It was a beautiful, it was cloudy, but I love the kind of weather of, 65 degrees, a little nice warm wind chill. And it held up, and it was a perfect day for some football. It was really a fall day down here, and the football was awesome. The energy has just been incredible, even when the weather's been bad. Yesterday, it was like a monsoon at the first practice that I got to go to, but the energy was really infectious, and you can see the level of competition. There is some awesome talent down here, and I think the takeaways today, it's a lot of the same names that continue to dominate. Christian Watson from North Dakota State, who I mentioned earlier, when it comes to what players can benefit from being in Mobile, small school, FCS level competition, Christian Watson is one of those guys that can benefit from destroying Power 5 cornerbacks, and that is what he is doing time and time again. There was a one-on-one play in the red zone today where he got a cornerback to flip outside on a double move. He goes inside, he falls, he slips himself. He almost juked himself out, but he recovered so beautifully and caught the touchdown. And there's just little things each day you're noticing about his game that you're like, man, he is going to be at least a second-round pick. He has such good concentration and makes tough catches at awkward positions all the time. His body control for somebody that's 6'4", is really incredible. He shined again today. The dominance continues for Christian Watson. I thought Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati actually made some really nice throws. He's had back-to-back, I would say, good days. I mean, he's been pretty inconsistent, And that's something that you need more from Ritter is consistency. But I'll tell you, he makes a couple awesome throws, and he made a few again today that you just say, wow. And it's like that special physical ability upside that not a lot of quarterbacks can make that throw. I mean, he made another nice throw today over the middle in the end zone, over the fingertips of a linebacker in front of the cornerback for a touchdown. And just that thing came out like a rocket. And it's like he has all the tools. When you talk about Malik Willis, you can use Ritter in the same kind of light. And I wouldn't be surprised if a team talked themselves into Ritter in the first round. The issue, again, is consistency, especially with his mechanics. The last 2 days I've noticed there's just too many times for a guy that's, 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". For a guy like that with that kind of arm power, why he struggles to make the easy throws so often, why he sails some throws, why some, there was just a easy swing pass yesterday that should have went for 15 to 20 yards and it died at the running back's feet. And it's like, how is he underthrowing passes with that arm strength? And mechanics is really a big thing. Everything's got to be in sync. And for Ritter, sometimes the footwork is off and, his hips aren't really moving with his arm. I think sometimes he relies too much on that arm strength and the mechanics don't really come along with it. I think one thing he needs to get better at too is his throwing motion. I think he has a low release point, kind of like Trey Lance had this year. That's something Kyle Shanahan said that he wants Lance to work on this year. And so with Ritter, I think sometimes that's why it dies really quickly. So there's things to work on with Desmond Ritter, but man, you can see the traits the past 2 days, and I thought he had a good day today. I really got more up close and personal with the American team today. A player that I haven't mentioned yet from UTSA that really pops up close is cornerback Tariq Woolen. This guy is a giant. He makes me look very small up close. He's 6'4", and has crazy length for a cornerback. He looks like a basketball player, and that's because he was. He was a track star. He was a basketball player. He's a wide receiver that was converted to a corner. If we're talking physical traits, as we do a lot on the Locked On Eagles podcast, if you want a guy to mold, Jordan Mailata at left tackle, if you want that kind of developmental player that could become a star because of the gifts he has physically, Tariq Woolen might be a player in the second or third round the Eagles should consider a corner. I mean, he is a giant. And I think he's raw, certainly. He's still a little stiff. A lot of big guys are going to struggle with that, i.e. Rasul Douglas. You definitely want to fit him in the right scheme. If you're going to have him press, you're going to want a safety over top, probably in cover 2. But you want him to play press. I mean, I noticed today in the red zone drills, in the red zone, I mean, when he was jamming at the line, when he gets his hands on a smaller receiver, it is tough for them to get by. It's over pretty quickly. And he moves well in space for a player that's 6'4". He has good, I would say ball skills as well. For a wide receiver, that's something you really want. You look at the conference championship games, how many interceptions were dropped. That's a big thing to focus on for corners and being able to complete. That's the difference between a pass breakup and a turnover, which can also be the difference between a win and a loss. I do want to see him better off ball at shadowing players in man coverage. Again, that's something that, I think can come with time, but I noticed Tariq Woolen today, just the physical gifts. He was standing right next to me on the sidelines, and I'm like, holy cow, this dude is huge. And right now, the Draft Network has him ranked as their 44th overall prospect. I would say he'll probably be a second or third round pick. And then again, all eyes were on Malik Willis. I thought it was cool at the end of the practice. They were doing the accuracy drills, trying to throw the football 30 yards down the field into a garbage can, and nobody was able to make it in the bucket. But Malik definitely came the closest. He hit the last 2 throws. He hit them twice and knocked down the garbage can. I put the video up on Twitter. And I'll tell you, I think one thing he needs to do better at is, finding more touch in some throws, but he can really rainbow a football when his mechanics are tight. And he showed that today. And you can just tell the difference, the hype, when it comes to when Malik Willis has the ball versus Sam Howell. Not even just with the media and their attention, but you notice some of the scouts and the coaches and the players themselves are like, let's go Malik. I mean, Malik's definitely kind of been the leader of the offensive team for the week so far. And so that was cool to watch as well. You can check that out on my Twitter at DiBiase_LOE. I'm going to sign off for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. But we will be back tomorrow and Saturday as we recap the Senior Bowl game. which will be on NFL Network. Until then, subscribe to the Locked On Eagles podcast wherever you get the show. We're available on YouTube as well in video form and on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Thanks for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And let's go Birds.